The small apartment in Seoul was quiet, except for the soft sounds of bare feet moving across the wooden floor. Kim Tae sat on his old couch, watching his 8-year-old son, Ji-ho, practice the same fighting moves he had taught him just yesterday. The boy moved with smooth steps, his small fists cutting through the air with surprising speed. For such a young child, Ji-ho already showed the natural talent that made his father proud. Tae smiled as he watched his son complete another set of movements. The boy had been learning these techniques since he was 5 years old, back when he could barely reach his father's knee. Now at 8, Ji-ho could perform kicks that would make grown men nervous. His balance was perfect. His timing was getting better. Every day, Tae had trained many soldiers during his time in the Korean Special Forces, but none of them had learned as fast as his own son. Outside the apartment window, the city of Seoul was settling into its evening routine. Cars moved through the streets below. People walked home from work, carrying bags of food for dinner. Children played in the small parks between the tall buildings. Everything seemed normal and peaceful, just like any other Tuesday night in the big city. Ji-ho finished his practice routine and turned to his father with bright eyes full of energy. "Can we practice the spinning kick again, father?" he asked, wiping sweat from his small forehead. Tae stood up from the couch and walked over to his son. "Of course, but remember what I taught you about balance. Your feet must be planted firmly before you begin the turn." The father and son moved to the center of the small living room. Tae showed the movement, slowly breaking it down into simple steps that Ji-ho could follow. First the stance, then the wind-up, then the explosive turn that brought the foot around in a perfect circle. Ji-ho watched carefully, his eyes following every detail of his father's demonstration. "Now you try," Tae said, stepping back to give his son room. Ji-ho took the proper stance, his small feet positioned exactly as his father had taught him. He wound up his body like a spring, then exploded into the spinning motion. His foot whistled through the air in a perfect arc. That was when the world changed. Forever. A bright purple light suddenly cut through the apartment wall like a knife through paper. The beam was so hot that it melted the concrete and steel as if they were made of ice. Smoke and sparks filled the room as more purple beams sliced through the walls from different angles. The peaceful evening was shattered in an instant. Tae grabbed Ji-ho and pulled him down behind the couch just as another beam cut through the space where they had been standing. The smell of burning metal and concrete filled the air. Heavy footsteps echoed from outside the apartment, followed by strange clicking sounds that Tae had never heard before. "Stay down," Tae whispered to his son, but his voice was calm and steady despite the chaos around them. His military training kicked in, automatically scanning for exits, counting potential weapons, assessing the threat level. The front door exploded inward with tremendous force, sending pieces of wood and metal flying across the room. Through the smoke and dust came figures that looked like they belonged in a nightmare. They were tall, much taller than any human, with gray skin that seemed to shimmer under the apartment lights. Their armor was sleek and silver, covering most of their bodies except for their faces, which had large black eyes and no visible nose. These creatures moved with mechanical precision, each step perfectly timed with the others. They carried weapons that looked like nothing Tae had ever seen before. Long silver rods that hummed with energy and glowed with the same purple light that had cut through his walls. The lead creature spoke in a voice that sounded like metal grinding against stone, but somehow Tae could understand the words. "Human child located," it said, pointing one of its long fingers directly at where Ji-ho was hiding. "Combat potential detected." Suitable for arena training, Tae felt his blood turn to ice. These things, whatever they were, had come for his son. "Over my dead body," he growled, rising from behind the couch. The former Special Forces sergeant moved faster than the aliens expected. He grabbed a heavy metal lamp from the side table and hurled it at the nearest creature. The lamp struck the alien in the center of its face, sending it staggering backward. Tae was already moving, using the momentum to slide across the floor and sweep the legs of another alien. The creatures were strong and their armor was tough, but they had not expected this level of resistance from a single human. Tay fought like a man possessed, using every piece of furniture in the apartment as a weapon. He shattered a wooden chair across one alien's back, grabbed a kitchen knife, and found the weak spots in their armor, drove his elbow into another one's throat. But there were too many of them. For every alien he took down, two more appeared through the holes in his walls. They kept coming like an endless stream of silver nightmares. Their weapons fired purple bolts of energy that burned holes in the walls and furniture. But Tay was too fast, dodging and weaving between their shots. While his father fought, Jiho tried to do exactly what he had been taught. He stayed low, moved quietly, and looked for a way to escape. But as he crawled toward the bedroom, two more aliens appeared, blocking his path. The boy stood up and tried to use the fighting moves his father had taught him. His small fists struck at the aliens' legs, and his feet aimed for their knees. One of the aliens seemed almost amused by the child's efforts. It reached down with one hand and easily lifted Jiho off the ground. The boy kicked and punched, but his small strikes did nothing against the creature's armored grip father. Jiho called out, his voice cutting through the sounds of battle Tay heard. His son's cry, and felt something break inside his chest. He roared like a wild animal and charged toward the aliens holding his boy. But just as he reached them, one of the creatures behind him fired its weapon. The purple bolt struck Tay in the back, sending waves of pain through his entire body. He fell to his knees, his vision blurring, his strength leaving him. Through the haze of pain, he watched helplessly as the aliens carried his son toward the gaping hole in his apartment wall. Outside, he could see a ship unlike anything from Earth hovering silently in the night sky. Its hull was smooth and dark, reflecting the city lights like black water. The lead alien walked over to where Tay knelt, struggling to stay conscious. It looked down at him with those large black eyes and spoke again in its grinding voice. "Your offspring shows promise," it said. "We will train him to fight in the great arenas of the Outer Rim. He will bring honor to our empire through combat." Tay tried to speak, tried to move, tried to do anything, but his body would not obey him. The alien weapon had done something to his nervous system, leaving him paralyzed, but still aware of everything happening around him. "The child will live," the alien continued, "if he proves worthy in the trials ahead. Many species contribute their young to our cause. Consider it an honor." With those words, the aliens began to withdraw, carrying Jiho with them. Tay watched as his son disappeared into the strange ship, his small form dwarfed by the massive creatures surrounding him. The ship rose silently into the night sky, its lights fading until it looked like just another star in the darkness. As feeling slowly returned to his body, Tay collapsed fully onto the destroyed floor of his apartment. Around him lay the wreckage of his peaceful life, scattered pieces of furniture, broken walls, and the lingering smell of alien weapons. The silence that followed was worse than the battle had been. In that silence, Kim Tae made a promise. That would change everything. The aliens had taken his son, but they had made one critical mistake. They had left the father alive. 3 months had passed since the night that changed everything. Kim Tae sat in his apartment, but it no longer looked like a home. The walls had been repaired, but now they were covered with star charts and alien technology. The furniture was gone, replaced with military equipment and weapon modifications. His living room had become a war room. Every morning, Tay woke up at 4 in the morning, just like he used to do in the Special Forces. He would exercise for 2 hours, pushing his 40-year old body harder than he had in years. His muscles ached and his joints creaked, but he did not care. He needed to be strong. He needed to be fast. He needed to be ready for what was coming. The news reports had stopped talking about the missing children. After the first month, the government said they were working on a solution, but Tay knew better. Politicians talked while families suffered. Bureaucrats held meetings while children were trapped somewhere in the darkness of space. He had no time to wait for people who moved slower than glaciers. His old team started arriving one by one. Park Sang came first, carrying a bag full of explosive materials and a face full of rage. The aliens had taken his daughter Mina during a school field trip. Sang was the best demolitions expert Tay had ever known. He could make a bomb out of kitchen supplies and blow up a building without hurting anyone. In the next room, Lee One arrived 2 days later. One was a tracker who could follow a mouse through a thunderstorm. The aliens had taken his twin boys during a soccer game. One had been coaching the team when the purple beams started cutting through the field. He tried to fight, but there were too many of them. Now he spent his days learning everything. He could about alien ship designs and weapon systems. Choi Min came with a truck full of communication equipment. Min had always been the smartest one in their unit. He could intercept radio signals, decode enemy messages, and hack into computer systems. The aliens had taken his nephew Do-yun, who had been staying with Min while his parents were overseas. Min blamed himself for not protecting the boy, even though everyone knew it was not his fault. Yang Ho was the last to arrive. Ho had left the military years ago to become a cargo pilot. He flew supplies between the new space stations that Earth had built around the moon. The aliens had taken his son Woo-sung from a birthday party. Ho had been working that day flying medicine to a research station. His wife called him crying, but by the time he got home it was too late. The 5 men sat around Ty's kitchen table looking at maps of the solar system and beyond. They had all been brothers in arms during their military service. They had fought together, bled together, and saved each other's lives more times than they could count. Now they were united by something even stronger than friendship. They were fathers who had lost their children. We cannot wait for the government. Ho said his pilot training, making him think about practical problems. How do we even get to where they took our kids? Min had been working on that problem for weeks. He spread out papers covered with numbers and diagrams. I have been listening to alien radio signals, he said. Most of it is coded, but I have figured out some patterns. They mentioned something called a processing station in the Kepler system. Kepler system, one repeated. That is light years away from Earth. Ho nodded but looked thoughtful. I know a guy who might be able to help us. My cargo company has been working with some questionable people lately, smugglers who do not ask too many questions about what they are carrying or where they are going. One of them owes me a favor. What kind of favor? Tai asked. The kind where I did not report him for carrying illegal weapons through Earth customs. Ho replied. Sang smiled for the first time in months. That sounds like our kind of guy. Over the next few weeks, the team worked like they were planning a military operation. Ho made contact with his smuggler friend, a man named Kim Duko, who operated a small cargo ship called the Silent Wind. Duko was not a good man, but he was a practical one. When Ho explained what they needed and how much they were willing to pay, Duko agreed to help them. The Silent Wind was not much to look at from the outside. It was an old cargo hauler with rust spots and dented hull plates, but Ho spent days working with Duko to modify the ship for their mission. They installed hidden weapon compartments, upgraded the engines for long-range travel, and added communication equipment that could intercept alien transmissions. Sang worked on developing new types of explosives specifically designed to work in space and against alien hull materials. He tested different chemical combinations in an abandoned warehouse outside Seoul. The results were impressive. His new bombs could cut through alien armor like hot knives through butter. One studied every piece of alien technology they could find. He analyzed the weapons left behind during the attacks, examined the armor fragments, and even dissected one of the alien bodies that the government had recovered. One discovered that the aliens were strong, but they had weak points. In their joints and neck areas that human weapons could exploit, Min set up a sophisticated listening post in his apartment. He intercepted alien communications 24 hours a day, slowly learning their language and understanding their military codes. The breakthrough came when he decoded a transmission about slave processing schedules. Min learned that recently captured humans were being held at stations for sorting before being shipped to their final destinations. Tay trained every day, pushing himself harder than ever before. He practiced with every weapon they had acquired, studied alien combat footage, and memorized the layout of alien facilities. The other men sometimes found him exercising at 2 in the morning or practicing knife-fighting techniques in the dark. Tay had become something more than just a soldier. He had become a force of nature, driven by a father's love and a warrior's skill. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would take the silent wind to the Kepler system, find the processing station, and rescue as many children as they could. The station was heavily defended with automatic weapons and patrol ships. It was the kind of target that would normally require an entire military fleet to assault successfully. But they were not a normal military unit. They were 5 fathers who had nothing left to lose. Their children were somewhere out there in the darkness of space, probably scared and wondering if their families were coming for them. The aliens had made a mistake when they took those children. They had not just kidnapped human beings. They had awakened something primal and dangerous in the fathers they left behind as they prepared for departure. Ty looked around at his team. These men had followed him into combat zones across Earth. They had trusted him with their lives in situations where one wrong decision meant death. Now they were trusting him to lead them across the galaxy to save their children. The silent wind lifted off from Earth. On a cold morning in November, the ship disappeared into the darkness between stars, carrying 5 fathers toward an impossible mission. The aliens thought they had taken helpless children from a weak species. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. The silent wind drifted through space like a piece of floating junk. Yang Ho had turned off most of the ship systems to avoid detection by alien sensors. Only the life support and basic navigation remained active. The 5 men inside sat in darkness, watching the massive alien station grow larger through the viewports. The Kepler processing station was bigger than anything they had imagined. It stretched for miles in every direction, a sprawling complex of docking bays, detention blocks, and processing centers. Thousands of lights dotted its surface, and ships moved constantly between the station and the surrounding space. Like insects around a hive, Ho piloted their ship toward a maintenance docking bay on the station's outer ring. Min monitored alien communications through his headphones, listening for any sign that they had been detected. The chatter was routine maintenance schedules, shift changes, supply deliveries. Nothing suggested the aliens suspected anything unusual about one more. "Cargo ship requesting docking clearance. We are cleared for Bay 7, Ho whispered, even though there was no one else to hear them. "The docking clamps are automated, so we should be able to get inside without talking to anyone directly," Tay checked. His equipment, one final time: combat knife secured in his boot, modified pistol loaded with armor, piercing rounds, small explosive charges, courtesy of Sang portable communication device to stay in contact with the team. Everything he needed to become a ghost in the alien corridors. The ship shuddered slightly as the docking clamps engaged. Ho began the shutdown procedures while the others prepared for insertion. One had studied the station's layout for weeks and knew exactly which corridors would take them to the detention areas. Sang had memorized the locations of critical systems that could be sabotaged to create confusion. Min would monitor communications and provide early warning of alien response. Tay led the way through the airlock, into the station's maintenance section. The corridors were dimly lit and filled with the hum of machinery. The air smelled strange, metallic, and sharp, like the inside of a battery. The walls were covered with alien symbols and control panels that made no sense to human eyes. They moved in single file using hand signals to communicate. One took point as their tracker, watching for patrol patterns and security cameras. Sang followed with his explosives, ready to create diversions if needed. Min stayed in the middle, monitoring radio chatter. Tay brought up the rear, watching for threats from behind. The first alien patrol appeared 20 minutes into their infiltration. 3 creatures in silver armor walking down a main corridor. One spotted them first and signaled for the team to take cover in a side passage. The aliens walked past without looking in their direction, their attention focused on data pads they were carrying. These are not soldiers, Tay realized as he watched them pass. These are workers, technicians, doing routine maintenance. The real security must be deeper in the station. They continued through the maintenance areas, moving toward the detention blocks. One led them through service tunnels and ventilation shafts, avoiding the main corridors where security would be tighter. The station was huge, but it was also predictable. Alien engineering followed logical patterns that could be learned and exploited. Sang began placing small explosive charges at strategic points, power junctions, communication relays, environmental controls. The charges were tiny and well hidden, but they would create chaos when detonated simultaneously, drawing security away from the detention areas and making their escape easier. Min suddenly held up his hand for them to stop. He pressed his earpiece closer and listened intently to the alien communications. After a minute, he turned to Tay with worry in his eyes. "There is increased chatter about security protocols," he whispered. "Something about conducting prisoner transfers ahead of schedule. They are moving people tonight." Tay felt his heart skip a beat. If the aliens were moving prisoners, that meant their window of opportunity was closing fast. They needed to reach the detention blocks before the children were shipped out to other locations. The team picked up their pace, moving through the station's corridors with greater urgency. One led them down a series of ramps toward the lower levels where the detention facilities were located. The lighting grew dimmer and the air grew colder as they descended. The walls here were thicker and covered with what looked like blast shields. They reached the detention level without encountering serious resistance. A few maintenance workers had to be quietly subdued, but no armed guards. The aliens clearly did not expect rescue attempts from inside their own facilities. Why would they? The nearest human military forces were light years away. The detention blocks stretched out before them like a nightmare. Hundreds of cells lined the corridors, each one containing beings from different worlds. Some were humanoid, others were completely alien. All of them looked broken and hopeless. The sounds that came from the cells were heartbreaking. Cries for help in languages they did not understand, but then they heard something that made them all freeze. "Help us, someone please help us." The voice was young and human and speaking Korean. One ran toward the sound, his training forgotten in the rush of hope. They found a section of cells containing human children, dozens of them ranging in age from 6 to 16. The children pressed against the energy barriers that kept them trapped, their faces lighting up when they saw adult humans for the first time in months. "Are you here to take us home?" a little girl asked. "We are here to take you home," Tay replied. But his heart sank as he looked through every face in the cells. Jiho was not among them, while One and Sang worked to disable the cell barriers. Tay grabbed one of the older boys and asked him quietly, "Have you seen other children like you?" "Newer arrivals." The boy nodded quickly. "Yes, they brought in more kids last week, but they did not stay here long. The guard said they were special, that they were going to advanced training facilities." Where Tay asked, though, he was afraid of the answer. The boy pointed upward, toward the core systems. He said, "I heard them talking about the Andromeda sector. They said it was a long journey." Tay closed his eyes and tried to control the rage building inside him. Jiho was already gone, shipped off to some other facility light years away. But these children were here now and they needed saving. The cell barriers flickered and died as Sang successfully overloaded the detention system. Dozens of human children poured out of their cells, crying and laughing and reaching for the soldiers who had come to save them. "Time to go." Tay said, We have got what we came for. The escape was harder than the infiltration. Moving through the station corridors with dozens of children required different tactics. The team formed a protective formation around the rescued prisoners, with one scouting ahead and Tay guarding the rear. Sang activated his explosive charges throughout the station, creating confusion and drawing security forces away from their route alarms. Began wailing as they reached the docking bay levels. Men reported heavy alien chatter about escaped prisoners and security breaches. But Yang Ho had the silent wind ready for immediate departure. The children were loaded aboard as quickly as possible, many of them too weak or traumatized to understand what was happening. As their ship pulled away from the station, Tay watched through the viewport. As explosions bloomed across the alien facility, Sang's charges had done their work, perfectly disabling critical systems and creating enough chaos to mask their escape. But the victory felt hollow. He had saved dozens of children, but not the one child who mattered most to him. Jiho was still out there somewhere being trained to fight in alien arenas. Tai had proven that human fathers could strike back against the alien empire. Now he had to prove they could go even deeper into enemy territory to bring their sons home. The rescued children changed everything about their mission. Yang Ho had to modify the silent wind to carry more passengers, while men worked around the clock to decode intelligence gathered from the processing station, the ship that had once held. 5 desperate fathers now carried a small army of survivors, each with their own story of loss and hope. Tay listened to every story. The children told him about other facilities they had seen during their capture. Transportation hubs where alien ships sorted prisoners like cargo training complexes, where young beings were forced to fight each other for the entertainment of their captors, mining colonies where the weak were worked to death in asteroid fields. A teenage girl named Soyu had been held at 3 different facilities before ending up at the processing station. She drew maps from memory showing the layouts of training complexes and the locations of other human prisoners. Her information was invaluable, but it also painted a terrifying picture of how vast the alien operation really was. We are not just fighting one enemy, Tay realized as he studied the intelligence reports. We are fighting an entire empire that spans hundreds of worlds. The team established a mobile base of operations, constantly moving between asteroid fields and abandoned space stations to avoid alien patrol fleets. One discovered that the Empire used predictable shipping routes to transport prisoners between facilities. By intercepting cargo, manifests men could track where specific groups of children had been sent. Their second rescue operation targeted a training facility orbiting a gas giant in the Ross system. The facility specialized in creating child assassins using advanced alien technology to enhance human reflexes and combat instincts. Tay led a team of volunteers, including some of the older rescued children, who insisted on helping with the mission. The assault was more difficult than their first operation. The alien guards at the training facility were actual soldiers, not maintenance workers. They fought back with military precision and advanced weaponry, but they had not expected human tactics or the fury of parents fighting for their children. Sang detonated charges that disabled the facility's artificial gravity, sending aliens and humans floating through the corridors in zero-gravity combat. One used his tracking skills to hunt down guard commanders, while they were disoriented by the chaos men jammed there. Communications preventing them from calling for reinforcements. They rescued 18 more human children from that facility, but the victory came at a cost. 2 of their volunteer fighters were killed in the assault, and several others were wounded. Tay realized that their small force could not continue taking such losses indefinitely. The third operation almost ended in disaster. They attacked an ice moon facility where children were being trained as miners for the Empire's asteroid operations. But the aliens had learned from previous attacks. The facility was heavily defended with automated weapon systems and a garrison of elite soldiers. Tay barely escaped with half his assault team and only managed to rescue 6 children sitting in the Silent Winds Medical Bay, treating wounded volunteers. Tay faced a harsh reality. They were winning individual battles but losing the larger war. Every facility they attacked was replaced by 2 more. Every rescued child represented dozens more, still trapped in the system. They needed allies. The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the rescued children, a boy named Hyunwoo, had been held at a facility with alien prisoners, members of other species who had been conquered by the Empire. These beings had formed underground resistance movements, but they lacked the military skills and desperate motivation that drove the human rescue operations. Min made contact with these resistance groups using communication codes that Hyunwoo had memorized. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Dozens of alien species had children trapped in the Empire training facilities. They wanted to help, but they needed leadership and tactical expertise. The small human rescue operation became the core of a growing rebellion. Tay found himself commanding not just his original team, but alien fighters from across the galaxy. Each species brought different skills and knowledge. Some could navigate in zero gravity, others could survive in toxic atmospheres, still others had natural camouflage abilities that made them perfect scouts. The rebellion established hidden bases in asteroid fields and dead systems. They captured alien supply ships and converted them for their own use. They recruited sympathetic aliens who were disgusted by their own empire's treatment of children. They slowly built a network of intelligence and resources that spanned multiple star systems. But with every success, Tai felt the weight of time pressing down on him. The intelligence reports all pointed to the same disturbing conclusion. The most promising human children were being sent to elite facilities in the Andromeda sector. These facilities produced champions for the Empire's gladiator arenas, where beings fought to the death for the entertainment of alien nobility. Jiho would be at one of these facilities. Tay was certain of it. His son had shown exceptional ability even as a small child. The aliens would want to develop that potential for their own purposes. The thought of his 8-year-old boy being trained to kill other children made Tay sick with rage. The rebellion grew larger and more ambitious. They began coordinating simultaneous attacks on multiple facilities, rescuing hundreds of children from different species. But the Empire was fighting back. Alien fleets hunted for rebel bases, Imperial agents infiltrated resistance cells, bounty hunters spread across the galaxy, searching for the humans who had started the uprising. Yang Ho had to constantly move their mobile headquarters, jumping between systems to stay ahead of Imperial pursuit. One scouted new targets while avoiding alien patrol fleets. Sang developed more powerful explosives to breach the upgraded defenses of newer facilities. Min worked to stay ahead of Imperial codebreakers who were learning to counter his communication intercepts. The rebellion had become a war, but it was still not enough to reach the core facilities where the elite gladiators were trained. Those installations were protected by entire fleets and guarded by the Empire's most dangerous soldiers. Getting to Jiho would require everything they had learned, and Tay stood on the bridge of their captured alien cruiser looking out at the stars and thinking about his son. Somewhere out there in the darkness, Jiho was growing up in captivity, learning to fight for the entertainment of beings who saw him as nothing more than an animal. The boy had probably given up hope that his father was coming for him, but Tay had not given up hope. He had turned his grief into a weapon and his love into a force that could move across the galaxy. The aliens had taken his son, but they had also created their own worst enemy, the war. For the children was far from over. The intelligence reports painted a picture that haunted Tay's dreams. The Crimson Circuit was a chain of planets dedicated entirely to gladiator combat, where the Empire's elite gathered to watch beings fight to the death for entertainment. These Worlds generated enormous wealth for the alien nobility who bet on the outcomes of individual battles and sponsored their favorite fighters. Each gladiator world specialized in different types of combat. Some focused on individual duels between matched opponents. Others featured team battles with complex objectives. Several planets hosted grand tournaments where winners earned their freedom, but losers faced execution. The most elite facility was reserved for champions who fought before, the Emperor himself. According to the intelligence networks that men had built across the galaxy, the most promising human children were being sent to a facility called the Crystal Arena. This installation orbited the fourth planet in the Crimson system, protected by 3 fleets and defended by the Empire's most elite guard units. It was where future champions were forged through years of brutal training and psychological conditioning. Tay studied the reconnaissance reports with growing dread. The Crystal Arena was not just a training facility, it was a fortress designed to withstand attacks from entire battle fleets. Its defenses included energy shields that could deflect planet-killing weapons, automated defense platforms that could destroy capital ships and garrison forces, numbering in the tens of thousands. Getting inside would require more than military tactics. It would require a miracle. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Li Wan had been developing contacts among the alien criminal underworld, and he learned about a smuggling operation that supplied exotic foods to the gladiator worlds. The wealthy aliens who attended the arena competitions demanded delicacies from across the galaxy, and they paid enormous sums for rare ingredients. One of the smugglers, a reptilian being named Sek, had lost his own offspring to the gladiator system years earlier. He had been trying to find a way to strike back ever since. When Wan approached him with a proposal, Sek agreed to help in exchange for a chance to rescue his own child. The plan was audacious, even by their standards. They would infiltrate the Crystal Arena during the Grand Championship, the most prestigious gladiator tournament in the Empire. Thousands of alien nobles would attend the event along with their personal guards and servants. The security focus would be on protecting the VIPs, not on watching for infiltrators among the service staff. Sek provided them with identification documents and uniforms that would allow them to pose as food service workers. His smuggling ship would carry them directly to the arena loading docks where they could begin their infiltration. The timing had to be perfect. They would have only hours to locate and extract the human prisoners before the tournament ended and security returned to normal levels. But the reconnaissance revealed something that made Ty's blood run cold. His son Jiho was scheduled to fight in the tournament. He was now 11 years old and had been transformed by 3 years of alien training into something that barely resembled the child who had practiced martial arts in their Seoul apartment. The boy had grown taller and stronger, his movements carrying the lethal precision of a professional killer. But intelligence reports suggested he still retained some memory of his previous life. The aliens had not been able to completely break his spirit, though they had certainly tried. Worse still, Jiho's first opponent was revealed to be another human child, a 12-year-old girl named Somi, who had been taken from Busan during the same wave of kidnappings. The Empire forced its human gladiators to fight each other, knowing that this would break their psychological resistance and eliminate any sense of unity among the prisoners. Tay realized he was not just planning a rescue mission. He was planning to stop his own son from being forced to kill another human child in front of thousands of cheering aliens. That thought filled him with a rage so pure and focused that it scared even his own teammates. The infiltration team included Taewon Sang and 12 volunteers from the rescued children who were now old enough and skilled enough to participate in combat. Operations Yangho would pilot their escape ship, while men coordinated with rebel forces throughout the system to create diversions and confusion. They also had unexpected allies. The other gladiator species had their own children trapped in the arena system, and they were willing to coordinate their escape attempts with the human operation. A simultaneous uprising across multiple facilities would stretch Imperial resources thin and create opportunities for everyone to escape. The approach to the Crystal Arena was terrifying in its beauty. The facility was a massive, transparent sphere that rotated slowly in space, its interior visible from outside like a giant snow globe. Inside the sphere, multiple arena floors were stacked on top of each other, each one hosting different types of combat, while alien spectators watched from luxurious viewing boxes. Sex ship docked at the service bay without incident. The arena staff was too busy preparing for the tournament to pay attention to one more food delivery. The infiltration team split up according to their assignments, with each member carrying false identification and communication devices hidden in their service uniforms. Tay made his way through the service corridors toward the gladiator holding areas, his heart pounding as he got closer to seeing his son. For the first time in 3 years, the corridors were filled with alien staff rushing to prepare for the tournament. Guards were stationed at key checkpoints, but they were focused on preventing gladiators from escaping, not on stopping service workers from entering. He found the human section of the holding area and felt his knees nearly buckle when he saw Jiho through the transparent wall of his cell. The boy sat in meditation pose just as Tay had taught him years ago, but his body showed the results of intensive combat training. Every muscle was perfectly defined, and scars marked his arms and torso where training weapons had found their mark, but when Jiho looked up and saw his father standing in the corridor, the boy's eyes widened with shock and desperate hope. The aliens had not been able to erase the bond between father and son. "Father," he whispered, pressing his hands against the cell barrier. "Is it really you?" "I am here to take you home," Tay replied, fighting back tears. "I am going to get you out of this place." The boy shook his head frantically. "Father, you have to leave now. If they catch you here, they will make you fight too. You do not understand what this place is like, what they do to people. I understand exactly what this place is," Tai said grimly, "and I am going to burn it down." The tournament was about to begin, and Tay could hear the roar of alien crowds filling the arena levels above them. Time was running out, but he had finally found his son. Now he had to figure out how to save him along with every other human child trapped in this floating nightmare. The gladiator worlds were about to discover that some fathers will cross the galaxy and fight the universe itself to protect their children. The Grand Championship began with a spectacle that turned Tay's stomach. Thousands of alien spectators filled the arena levels, cheering as holographic displays showed the tournament brackets. The opening ceremony featured captured beings from dozens of worlds forced to perform combat demonstrations, while their captors placed bets on the outcomes. Tay watched from a service corridor as the first matches began. Young beings barely older than children fought with weapons designed to maim and kill, while the crowd roared its approval. The alien nobles in their luxury boxes treated the whole thing like entertainment, never thinking about the families that had been destroyed to provide their amusement. Min reported through their communication system that he had successfully infiltrated the arena's control center. The tournaments were broadcast across the empire, generating massive advertising revenue and political propaganda. But Min had planted a virus in the broadcasting system that would hijack the signal at a predetermined time. One had located the other human prisoners scattered throughout different sections of the holding areas. There were over 40 human children in the facility, ranging in age from 10 to 17, all of them had been trained as gladiators, and many showed signs of severe psychological trauma from years of forced combat. Sang had been busy placing explosive charges throughout the arena's infrastructure. His bombs were hidden in maintenance shafts, power conduits, and structural support beams. When detonated simultaneously, they would cripple the station's defenses and create enough chaos to mask their escape attempt. The breakthrough came when one of their alien allies provided intelligence about guard shift changes during the tournament. The arena security focused all their attention on the spectator areas and gladiator entrance points, leaving the service sections relatively undefended for brief periods between matches. Tay used these windows to move through the facility, disabling security cameras and neutralizing guards who might interfere with their escape route. He moved like a ghost through corridors he had memorized from reconnaissance reports using skills learned through decades of military service and 3 years of desperate preparation. The moment of truth came during the 4th hour of the tournament when Jiho was scheduled for his first match. The boy was escorted toward the arena floor in shackles, flanked by alien guards who carried shock weapons to maintain control. Tay followed at a distance, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The gladiator entrance tunnel was a long corridor that connected the holding areas to the arena floor. It was designed like a gauntlet with multiple security checkpoints and no cover for escaping prisoners. But Tay had studied every inch of the layout and identified the single weak point in their security system as Jiho's escort approached the final checkpoint before the arena floor. Tay struck. The first guard went down silently with a knife to the neck before he could raise an alarm. The second guard managed to draw his weapon, but Tay was already moving, slamming his elbow into the alien's throat and grabbing the shock weapon. Jiho stared at his father in amazement as Tay quickly freed him from the shackles. "Can you fight?" Tay asked. The boy nodded grimly. "I have been fighting for 3 years, father. These aliens taught me everything they know about killing. Now I am going to use it against them, father." And Sun moved through the arena infrastructure like a 2-man army. Jiho had intimate knowledge of the facility's layout from his years of captivity, while Tai provided the tactical expertise needed to avoid guard patrols and security systems. Together they began systematically freeing other human prisoners and eliminating any aliens who tried to stop them. The uprising spread faster than anyone had expected. The gladiators from other species joined the rebellion when they realized what was happening. Guards who expected to fight broken slaves instead found themselves facing coordinated military tactics led by desperate parents and children who had nothing left to lose. Sang detonated his charges, precisely on schedule. The explosions ripped through the arena's infrastructure, knocking out artificial gravity in several sections and plunging large areas into darkness. Emergency systems began blaring warnings while automated fire suppression systems filled the corridors with thick foam. Min activated his virus at the same moment, sending the footage of the gladiator uprising across the Empire's entire communication network. Instead of tournament highlights, alien viewers saw human children fighting for their freedom and winning. The images sparked uprisings on dozens of other worlds as oppressed species realized that resistance was possible. The escape became a running battle through multiple levels of the arena complex. Imperial reinforcements arrived faster than expected, but they found themselves fighting a 3-dimensional battle in a facility that was actively collapsing around them. Yang Ho had positioned their escape ship at the arena's main docking bay, but reaching it required fighting through increasingly organized opposition. Tay and Jiho fought side by side for the first time since that night in Seoul 3 years earlier. The father used his military training while the son employed everything he had learned in the gladiator system. Their combined skills overwhelmed guards who expected individual opponents, not coordinated team tactics. The final push to the docking bay became desperate as Imperial elite forces surrounded their escape route. Heavy weapons fire filled the corridors while energy blasts melted through bulkheads and deck plates. Tay found himself covering the retreat of over 60 rescued children while alien soldiers closed in from multiple directions. That was when the gladiators from other species made their stand. Beings who had been enemies in the arena now fought together to protect the human children who had started the rebellion. A massive alien warrior named Croc used his body as a shield to protect the smaller humans, while reptilian fighters used their natural armor to absorb weapon fire. The silent wind lifted away from the crystal arena just as Imperial battlecruisers arrived to restore order. But it was too late. The rebellion had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes, and the footage of their victory was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. Dozens of other species were rising up against the Empire, inspired by the example of human fathers who had refused to abandon their children as they fled toward. The Outer Rim Tay sat with his son in the ship's medical bay. Both of them were wounded but alive. Jiho had grown into a young man during his captivity, but his eyes still held the spark of the boy who had practiced martial arts in their apartment. "Never stopped believing you would come for me," Jiho said quietly. "I never stopped looking for you," Tay replied. "I would have searched the entire galaxy." The war against the Empire was far from over, but everything had changed. The aliens had thought they were taking helpless children from a weak species. Instead, they had awakened a force that would shake the foundations of their civilization. Human fathers had proven they would cross any distance and fight any enemy to protect their young, and the galaxy would never be the same.